You're listening to Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Join us as we explore how medical professionals can achieve stellar success in all areas of life. It's time to level up.
Again, a Stellar Success podcast. I have a great guest today in a specialty that will help all of us, Gabriel Griess. How are you, Gabriel?
Wonderful, wonderful. Great to be here.
Thanks for coming on. I want to start with something that, it's a big question for a lot of people. Do you consider yourself successful? And if you do, what does it mean to you?
Wow. I do. I think that question has changed throughout my life. My whole life, I've been a high achiever and thought, to do good things and to serve. And, a lot of it started out sort of chasing accolades or chasing awards or achieving goals. And I really have shifted my focus probably in the last handful of years to really being a winner with my family, in my community, in my business. And I really define that by just doing the right thing. And so success is an interesting thing, and the world has a lot to say about it.
I agree. Everybody has a different definition, and it means something else for each person. But it's interesting to me how people relate to success differently in their lives. When they're young, middle age, and towards the end of life, it means different things for the same person, and the definition changes based on priorities. And I always like to see how people relate to that kind of question. Can you give us a little bit of overview of your journey? How did you start, and where are you now?
Yeah, so I grew up as a kid in a small farming community in Nebraska, and went off to the Air Force Academy and learned to fly airplanes, and spent 20 years in the Air Force, and then retired at the ripe age of 42, and spent some time in entrepreneurial land, and then ended up in medical staffing. And nothing I ever thought I'd be doing, but have really, really enjoyed it. And really in the last year, our company has accelerated beyond really reason. And I attribute it a lot to my shift in focus went to that my employees and the people in our company became my mission. And I really have focused a lot on serving them and building them up and training and giving them opportunities. And when that all happened, things just went gangbusters.
Were you said you were an entrepreneur from the beginning. Was this your first enterprise, or you went through different other things before doing this?
I had a number of failed attempts.
I was about to ask about those.
Yeah, a lot of smaller, sort of attempts and different things. Probably the biggest one was an attempted $400 million water pipeline in Reno to put in 60,000 homes, and was really challenged to raise the necessary funds in New York to get that off the ground. And probably my biggest lesson in that entire endeavor was we think about Wall Street and we think about bankers as really wanting to maximize profit and to have all these big wins. And in reality, meeting after meeting, the big question was how are you going to mitigate risk? And it was more about how do you not lose money than how do you make money. And so that really has influenced a lot of my entrepreneurial activities after that particular event.
So after that episode, how did you come up with the idea of a medical staffing company?
Well, it's interesting because a dear friend of mine had been in the business for about 15 years, and he was a recruiter turned entrepreneur, and really grew a successful business. And as I was kind of transitioning out of the Air Force and had that experience not work out for me in Northern Nevada, he was lamenting some challenges he was having in a staffing firm around personnel and management and policy and accounting and finance. And I said, look, I can write a mean policy and I can run a spreadsheet, but I don't know anything about staffing. And so he brought me in, and I learned the staffing business working alongside him as I solved a lot of the financial challenges and the policy challenges, and then ultimately stepped out and launched our own staffing firm.
Interesting. And when was this?
So that would have been like 2017, 16, 17 in that area.
So you got through COVID
We did.
with this enterprise, just starting off, and then COVID hit.
Yeah, COVID was crazy, and it was interesting being in staffing because we really were caught between the clinicians and the facilities. And the facilities continued to ratchet up bill rates, and clinicians continued to want to be paid more, and the demand signal was untenable. You couldn't meet it, right? And
Yeah.
we just fought really hard to help folks out, and like everybody, we didn't know what was going on. We just were doing our best every day.
What kind of medical staffing do you provide?
So primarily nurses,
Mhm.
but we do some work with locum tenens and advanced practice folks, and then also interim executives when those positions open up. But primarily RNs and allied.
Interesting. So let me go back to your own journey in this. You know, you come from a background of a military background. You're a guy who I assume um, knows the rules, apply the rules, and play by the rules. Um, Entrepreneurship is something that it's a different animal. It doesn't have rules. You cannot apply too many rules, and it's very hard to follow them. How do you meet those two mentalities?
Well, I think it's kind of what I talked and spoken to earlier about taking care of the people, and that was a mission focus in the military, especially as a leader or a commander, was take care of the people and they'll take care of the mission. And as we shifted into that space, things really started to work out. So you don't need to have a lot of rules if you're hiring good people and you're focusing on them. And I tell my team that my responsibility is to organize, train, and equip, which is actually a military term, OT&E. Is let me put the structure in place. Let me ensure you have the proper training and skills and the equipment to do your job. And then if I've done that correctly, I should be able to get out of your way and let you really, really thrive. And with good feedback and leadership and accountability, we can do lots of great things together.
Yeah, I agree. This is one field that you really need to know and learn how to work with people
It's all,
because it's all about people.
yeah.
You hire people, you have to serve people, and obviously you need to tell us, what is the skill and the routine and the habit that you think gave you most credit to this success that you have right now with your company from the
Mm,
personal point of view.
well, I think getting the priorities straight. I have a pretty strong faith, and so God, and then self, and spouse, and family, and then mission, and then business. And so business is actually the sixth priority on that list. And when I first sort of stepped into that environment, if you'd asked me, I would have listed them backwards. I would have said business first, and then community, and then kids, and then spouse, and then maybe myself. And if I've got time for God, then I'll put him in there. And and I just figured it out that that's not the way it works. And faith first, and then I have to fill myself up. So I've got to get rest, and I need to eat right, and I need to work out and have my quiet time. And from there, I can, fill up my family, and there's more of me to give. And I think too often, so many people, and especially in the healthcare environment, so many people are servants and so many people are givers that they get burned out. They give too
Yeah,
much, give too much, they give too much, and they feel like they're cheating or doing something wrong when they're trying to take time for themselves to refuel and rest and recover. And so I think just getting your priorities straight really is essential to entrepreneurs and really to everybody.
yeah, it's like put your oxygen mask first and then
Exactly.
help the others.
Yeah, yeah. And then choose which kid you like better.
Right. um, how do you go through your day? What kind of structure do you have in place to deal with all these priorities you just mentioned?
Well, my executive assistant tells me that I'm way too busy and I do way too many things, and she has some truth there. We've started getting up earlier and going to bed earlier. So those are two things that really are supporting all the things on our table. I mean, today when I got to the office, I'd already been up 4 hours, and it was really kind of a weird moment in time. I was like, I've done so much already, and the company and everybody else is just kind of getting started for the day. And so getting your priorities straight, getting your schedule straight, protecting your calendar, protecting your time. We've been doing a lot of work with Gino Wickman's book Traction, and our facilitator in that process is like, you got to get laser focused on what is important and learn to say no. Learn to step away from things and to step away from opportunities. And I was reading Who Not How the other day, and there's a quote in there that basically says, if it's not a absolute yes, then it's a no. And that's hard to learn. It's hard to say no, especially when you want to help people and help out all the time.
That's true. If it's not a hell yes, it's a heck no.
Exactly. You've read the book too.
Yeah. So that's a very good point. And I think, nowadays, I think we're faced to so many distractions everywhere that we can get lost so easily in losing the priorities and just go for things that they don't really matter in our lives. And, at the end of the day, you look at your time spent and you're like, what did actually I do today? Like what was my time actually spent with purpose in what I want to do? And I think that's one thing that successful people do. Like they prioritize their day. They think about just exactly what you said. What are my priorities in life, and just go for them.
Well, and knocking off those big things. Some people say eat the frog first. Come in and take down the tasks that you are least interested in, or you can prioritize based on what you think has the biggest return on investment. You can think about, the first 3 to 5 people who are, waiting on you or responsive to you. I mean, so often with entrepreneurs, if we're not careful, we become the bottleneck in our company. If we're not delegating authority and decision making into our organizations, then we hire 4 or 5 or 6 really good superstars who are, running the divisions or the departments of the company, and then all of a sudden they're waiting on me or the leader to give an answer, and all you've done is just really duplicated your own work, and you just don't get the efficiency and the effectiveness out of people. So I tell our folks to go out and break things.
Like physical breaks.
You'd be surprised. Most people are terrified at the thought of failing or breaking things. But yeah, I say go break things. Click that button. Send that email. Do whatever you think is right. If you're following our values and you're a good, moral, ethical person, then you really can't get too far over your skis. And if you do, then you're like, hey, good job. Let's debrief it and not do that again. And if there's a little something to clean up, you will. But most people have an internal compass that says, this is probably as far as I should go without asking for a little bit of help.
Yeah. Now, as a successful entrepreneur, especially in medical field, in healthcare, I think dealing with failures makes a big difference. How do you approach this in terms of risk taking and correcting the path once something doesn't go right?
Are you talking about like clinical outcomes or
no, I'm talking about business outcomes.
Okay.
Like if there's so many things you can control, but when it's something that you cannot control because you work with people, how do you approach this from your point of view, the leadership of the company?
So I've had a standard that I've probably had for about 15 years, ever since I really kind of started stepping into a place where I actually had a team or an organization that I was responsible for, and I always said your first mistake's on me, and I describe it or answer it this way, and that is, if you make a mistake, I don't believe you get out of bed in the morning to go screw things up. Like I don't think people show up and log in and they're like, hey, let me see if I can cause havoc in my company, right? And so if there's an error or mistake, I attribute it to one of two things. Either I didn't communicate to you clearly enough what the expected outcome was, right? Like, hey, I need this, I need it by this time. It needs to, conform to these standards. So I didn't communicate, or I haven't trained you to do it. Like you just don't have the capacity to accomplish what it was I told you to do. And so I really think in most cases, it's one of those two things. And so when we have, mistakes or gaps or failures, we dive in on one of those two things, either clarity of communication or, hey, you just didn't have the skills. Let's get you trained up so that you can do this next time.
That's a great approach, actually. If I think about this, because I read a statistic recently. They said that most employees don't leave the company. They leave the leadership.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great approach to kind of make them stay, because like you said, nobody wakes up in the morning, how can I screw the company up, today? So yeah, it's a great point. I like that.
There's an element to it of radical responsibility, right? So, they make the mistake and I'm saying it's on me, that I own it. And what that creates in an environment is a place where, that partner or that employee or teammate can really step in, and they have an opportunity then to own what they understand to be what they could have done better. They
Yeah.
may say, well, I could have asked for clarification, or hey, maybe I could have jumped in and Googled how to do that, or gotten a video on it, or it opens the door for them to take responsibility as well, which is the whole end state, right? That's how they learn. And so it's really a neat tool and technique when you put it to use.
Yeah, it's let me ask you a question regarding the business itself, because nowadays, and we've been through COVID and we know what it took from the healthcare point of view to staff those hospitals and meet the needs that patients had. What do you think is the most challenging issue right now in healthcare staffing?
Gosh,
Is it
great
is it people? Is it jobs? Is it training, or lack of? Um, what do you think the main challenge is for you, like from the medical staffing point of view?
Yeah, we have a supply problem, and everybody knows that in the space in terms of quality clinicians. That's why we continue to push care down the continuum of care, like what docs used to do, NPs do, what NPs used to do, RNs do, what
Yeah.
RNs used to do, LPNs do. Like, it's the only way we're trying to increase capacity, is to push care further down the chain, and there's some real wins in that. Uh, you know, but I don't know that it's sustainable, right? We lost a few 100,000 nurses in COVID just because they retired and quit and stepped out, in the environment. And they took, 20, 30.
Are you a busy medical professional striving to excel in life and work? Stellar Success Podcast brings you the habits and insights of top leaders in medicine and beyond. Discover strategies for balance, growth, and fulfillment in every episode. Follow us on Instagram at Stellar Success Podcast for daily inspiration. Start your journey to success today. Subscribe to the YouTube channel now.
40 years of experience with them, and you can't replace that bedside experience that we've been there, done this. We've been through EMR changes, we've been through regulatory changes, we've been through ratio changes, whatever it is. Like, there's a lot of institutional knowledge that has been lost. And so I think there's a piece too where we've got to invest in the training. We got to invest in really paying the people in the schools as much or more than they would make in a clinical setting, so folks are willing to step out and share their knowledge and teach. And teaching is such a blessed profession that people can transfer their knowledge, transfer their experience, encourage folks to step in, really inspire that next generation of clinician or practitioner.
I see. I want to touch a little bit on I would say maybe a delicate subject for some people, regarding the financial success of an entrepreneur in healthcare. And, everybody assumes that if you have your own company, and you run a good business, you're successful financially. That might be the case. That might be not, depending on your financial habits.
Yes.
So I want to ask you, what do you think the strategy is for yourself to secure that kind of financial future for your company and for yourself?
Well, frankly, for the first couple of years, we were in the black, but then as we began to scale our company, we ran in the red for about 3 years. And in fact, at the end of 2023, I had chatted with my wife and said, hey, if at the end of next year, at the end of 24, if we're not cruising like we think we should be, I think we ought to shut this thing down. I'm retired. I've got a military pension. I've got lifetime health care from the military. So I'm like, I don't have to do this. And but we're doing it. Oh my, my light went out. We're doing this because we believe in the mission, and I appreciate the opportunity to be part of the care cycle, and really to bring all those things that we've talked about before to staffing. And so when it comes to being responsible with your finances, first you've got to have enough cash to have some runway to get out of the gate. And then you're constantly in a battle, or at least I'm constantly in a battle going, do I scale for growth, or do I sort of, hold on and restrain capital for what might be a rainy day? And so we've done it in a couple of ways. We've not too long ago established a savings account, and so a piece of revenue every week goes into savings to kind of prepare for that rainy day. We really try and manage our employee headcount internally to make sure that our external staff that we've got out in the world working as clinicians can help support that. And then we continue to invest in people and processes. Processes are huge, right? Grinding out inefficiencies and finding ways to improve or automate. But like we talked about, this is a people business, right? We're people, working and leading people to then staff people to put them to work, taking care of people, and that's
Any
challenging.
Any personal strategy that you have for your own self?
Financially?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love to put money aside in traditional, stock and equity and investments. I have some real estate. I know you were talking about real estate earlier. So we have some raw land that we've acquired here in Texas because it's a growing environment.
There's plenty of.
Yeah, lots of land here, and lots of people coming, and so it's a good place to be. I mean, for folks, I think that financial literacy is essential. I think that getting started is the best time was yesterday, but if you can't do it yesterday, start today. Lots of folks would say start with what you know, but you've got to get started. That's the only way to really secure your financial future.
Yeah, I agree. Financial literacy, it's something that we fell behind a lot in the society in general. I think it's something that everybody looks for and they can't find it. There's nothing in school, there's nothing in college, there's nothing in professional schools, medical school, any of that. How to run your own business, how to make money, how to balance your checkbook, for God's sake. We're not talking about sophisticated investments here. We're just talking about financial basics, and that surprises me a lot because I see a lot of successful people that they have a great, I would say, business intelligence, emotional intelligence, high IQ, but sometimes from the financial point of view, they don't know much and they need training, and it's very hard to find a good training in finances. And that's why I'm looking for people that are can give some ideas or some options or some strategies from their own point of success to others, to kind of try to educate or guide them in a way or another.
Yeah, I encourage my team members to always take advantage of our 401k. I think a Roth IRA is probably one of the standard places to start. You can get an easy like S&P 500 tracking fund, which is just an aggregated basket of stocks that represent the majority of the economy, and start putting money away. And it's there's that, I don't remember what the psychological term is, but we've all experienced where like you buy a new car and then all of a sudden you see that car everywhere, right?
Yes.
So you get started and all of a sudden you listen to the news differently, you read the headlines differently, you pay attention to the CPI report, or what's the Fed doing, or like all these terms and things that seem scary and mystifying all of a sudden start to make sense. But it's a foreign language, and the only way you're going to learn it, it's like medical school or medicine, right? The only way you're going to learn it is to get in the game.
Yeah, I agree. What's your daily routine?
Well, it should include a little more exercise, frankly, but I'm kind of an oddball there. Like if I'm at the coffee machine, I'm doing squats, or my daughter's, getting dressed in the morning, I might be doing burpees or, something simple like that. I really have to kind of squeeze my personal exercise into the day. I go up and down the stairs, 2 stairs at a time. None of it breaks a sweat, but it keeps some flexibility and mobility going. But our day starts about 5:15. My wife and I get up and we have about a half an hour of quiet time. We have some daily meditations and declarations we do in prayer. And then we begin to rouse the kids at about 6 and get them going. And then there's breakfast and off to school. And I do my best to leave my phone down. I pick it up immediately to read the Bible verse of the day. And then there's an app called Jesus Calling, and there's just like a little 2-minute read there. And that really gets my mindset squared away to start the day. And then I seek to not touch my phone again then until about 6:45 or 7 o'clock when we're getting ready to go out the door. And so that keeps me present with the family and in the moment of the day, which is super valuable, because if I get sucked into whatever issue it is that's going on, then all of a sudden my mind is somewhere else and I start to get short with the kids and distant, and I'm not listening with one ear, and I already have bad hearing from flying airplanes for so long. And and then I get to the day. I'm big on Post-it notes. I have Post-it notes everywhere. So I'll write down the top 2 or 3 things I really want to get done that day and get after those. And then my executive assistant organizes my inbox for me so I can get to the, those emails where somebody is really needing to hear from me to get their day going. And then it's usually a series of meetings. And then, here it is at 6:30 at night in Central Time. And, this is about the time I kind of wrap up my day. And, I've mentioned
you get on a podcast with Stellar Success.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you. And I mentioned my executive assistant a couple of times, and
yeah, how is that working for you?
It's amazing. It is amazing. It was kind of one of those things where, there was sort of this level of elevation as a business owner or whatever, where, people really just started having them. And, everyone I talked to that had an executive assistant, like it changes their life. And the first thing I noticed was a sense of peace. And the peace comes really primarily from my email inbox and the fact that I get about 400 emails a day, and I can't read them all. I just can't get to them. Right. And so I knew that I was missing important, actionable, meaningful, responsive follow-up, either to somebody inside our organization or outside our organization. And responsiveness is actually one of our core values in our company. And so I needed to get that under control. And then there's also the relational stuff, like setting up a podcast like this. It's meaningful, it's valuable, it's fun for me. It's, good to meet, other leaders in the community and to get a chance to share a few things. And so having somebody support me and doing some of those higher value things in my day it's just so important. And so I can't tell you when it's right for you, but the time when you live in sort of an overwhelmed state, and there's a little bit of financial liquidity around where you think you could make that happen, it really bought back a lot of my time, and that's the most precious resource we got.
That's a great book out there, Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you read that, but I would certainly recommend it for business owners. Is this a physical person that you're using at your office, or is a virtual assistant type of thing?
No, she's virtual. Actually, it's gonna be funny. I'm gonna do this, and this company here, Hire VP, is actually the organization that my EA is with. So
got it.
Yeah, great.
Very nice.
Great group of folks.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it to a busy professional and business owner to have someone like this, because it not only buys back your time, but like you said, it gives you the mental capacity to deal with stuff that's more important for you.
100%. Yeah, I'll never go back. In fact, there'll probably be a second one, not too far.
Exactly. Gabriel, with the wisdom that you have right now, with the experience, the good things and the bad things that happened to you, if you look back into your own self when you were young, what kind of advice would you give to yourself?
Be patient. There's one I use a lot called Bloom Where You're Planted, which is do the best where you're at. I struggled, especially as a young officer, thinking, hey, I can do more. I can do that. I should go here. I should do that. Give me more responsibility. And in some ways I neglected the responsibilities I had because I didn't think they were big enough. And that was a weakness. And so bloom where you're planted, do great work where you're at, and somebody's going to realize it and give you a new opportunity. As you become successful, there's a phrase that says the reward for good work is more work, right? And so, I think that be patient. Another part is just, it's really hard when you're younger to realize the compounding effects of time. And whether that's in your relationships or in your finances or in your personal, capacity, whether it's IQ or EQ, there's not a lot you can do in a couple of months. You can kind of get stuff going in about a year, but in 3 to 5 years, you can do almost anything. And so having a clear vision on where it is that you want to go, be grounded in your purpose, the reason God put you here, there's something only you can do, and have an alignment with that, and then get up every day and do your best. There's a book we use in our organization called The Four Agreements by Don Ruiz Miguel.
Amazing book.
It is, and it's simple. Do your best, be impeccable with your word, don't make assumptions, and don't take things personally.
Yeah.
And so we use it with our team in that, I've yet to find a professional disagreement where one of the two people weren't in violation of one of those principles, where somebody wasn't doing their best, somebody wasn't impeccable with their word, somebody made an assumption, or somebody's taken something personally. And when you can label it, when you can define that irritation, then you can have a conversation that's not about you or me, Doc. It's like, hey, this thing is causing us some challenges, and then people can get to resolution. And it's through those elements, it's through those steps that you build trust, right? When we've not gotten along, and then all of a sudden we can come to agreement and move through something together, then now there's a level of trust there, because I can have faith that you're not going to hurt me, and that I'm not going to hurt you if things aren't perfect. So
Yeah, I want to hang on at something that you said now regarding the expectations and the goals of someone. They always said we tend to overestimate our goals for the first year, but we tend to underestimate what we can do in 10 years from now. And that's where the perspective comes in place, and think big comes in place, because you can achieve something much bigger than you think at this moment, because you tend to underestimate what you're going to do in 10 years from now. Speaking of, what are the goals for this year?
So I want to hold there, and I'll come back to it. There's a new one I just got on that same thread, and that is, people tend to overestimate risk and underestimate opportunity. And
I like that.
I'd never heard it until I was having lunch with a friend the other day who's an amazing gentleman, and he shared that, and I'm like, wow. And it's so true, especially when people are at the start of their entrepreneurial journey. They're like, all these things can go wrong. Well, yeah, a couple of them could go right, and then where are you going to be at? So
right, exactly. You need to position yourself in that situation. Opportunities are everywhere. You just need to see them and take them.
Yes, yeah. Get started, right? Just get started. And you'll figure it out with your movement.
So what about your business this year? Where do you want to go?
Well, we're looking for probably another double is the goal, maybe a little bit more. We tripled last year, which was a huge move. We got a couple of good clients and one huge client in the clinical research space. So we're currently staffing a national decentralized clinical trial, phase 3. And so we have a bunch of nurses and sub-investigators and out there working on just an amazing compound, and we're really proud of that. But I really finally believe I have the right team, and I think I have the right team in the right seats on the bus. And it's the first time in the history of the company where I feel like I can step really into leadership and management and accountability and goal setting and visioning. And so our goal this year will be to double again, maybe a little more if we get it really going.
Well, obviously you're doing something right.
Well, the team certainly is. Thank you.
Yeah, the team is made, if you want to go fast, you go by yourself. If you want to go farther, you go with the team, right? That's the saying. And I think you'll perfectly understand that concept in your company. And I think you're going to achieve great things this year.
Thank you.
How can people reach out to you for advice, opinions, see what you're doing?
Sure. The website for our company is excelmedstaff.com. So EXCELMED staff.com. And my email is just my first name, Gabriel @excelmedstaff.com. And I love working with folks. I'm a coach, and I love these conversations and the opportunity just to share. I've been blessed in so many ways, and probably bumped my head and skinned my knees a few more times than most, and come away with a lot of learning. So it's been good. It's been a great journey.
Yeah, I definitely recommend people to reach out to you, because you have what it takes, and I think you can share a lot of your wisdom so far how to make other people succeed.
Well, I appreciate that. And actually this September, we're going to have a book come out called The Results Tree. So our website is being built right now. It'll be theresultstree.com. And it's a book all about really being grounded in your vision and then having clarity about that, taking committed action, and then ultimately achieving the results. And so often I think we try and set goals that come from all sorts of places besides our own personal purpose and reason for being here. And it's why they fail, right? When I'm pulling stuff off of Instagram or what my friends are doing or what other folks are saying, and I try those goals on or try those ideals on, they just don't stick. They don't work because they're not mine. They're not aligned to me. And so I work with folks a lot on really defining their vision and then setting out on how to create the life they're looking for.
That's awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Send you a copy, Doc.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time, and keep being successful.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap on Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Franku. Interested in joining us? Go to stellarsuccesspodcast.com/guest to apply. Stay stellar and level up.